Welcome to everyone this afternoon to the special meeting. I would like to acknowledge or welcome the people in the gallery and those online. Could I acknowledge our Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jeff McDonald? Can I acknowledge the Acting Chief Executive Officer and GM for Planning, and the staff have taken the time to be part of this session this afternoon, and my colleagues. I'd also like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties. Oh, and sorry, Councillor Megan online, the chair of the portfolio. Sorry about that, Megan. I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today. The Western Waka Waka, the Guyabal and Jarowa peoples, and also the Biggamal people to the west of us. I'd like to pay respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. If we go to item 2, I note in the notes here there are 2 apologies from the Mayor and also Councillor Summerfield. We don't require a resolution for that, and there's no... Are there any leave of absences requested for future meetings, given that this is a statutory? No? Okay. We'll go to item 3, and that's the confirmation of the special meeting of Council on the 23rd of March 2022. Do I have a mover? Councillor Jeff, and a seconder, Councillor Rebecca. Those in favour? That's carried. Is there any business arising out of those previous minutes? If not, we'll go straight to item 5, the suspension of standing orders. Could I have a mover and a second? Mover, Councillor Melissa, and seconder, Councillor Tim, that we suspend standing orders. Those in favour? It's carried. So item 6 is the material change of use. I won't read all the letters there. For the service station on the corner of 25 Toomey Street and in Yarraman, I'd like the officer who's... Jeff, to come and speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, councillors, council staff and guests. Today I bring before you a development application for a material change of use for a service station and operational work for 2 roof signs. Wendy, could I just get attachment 2, please? The proposal is over 25 Toomey Street, Yarraman, a property that comprises 3 separate lots, as shown on the plan, the map, sorry. It is located on the corner of the New England Highway and the Diagula Highway, commonly referred to as Margaret Street being the New England Highway and Toomey Street being the Diagula Highway. The development application is impact accessible and therefore involve public notification. During the public notification period, 10 properly made submissions were received, including a petition signed by 243 persons. I'll provide a summary of how the issues raised by submitters have been addressed as part of the assessment later in this presentation. The property is located, attachment 3, please, Wendy. The property is located within local centre zone under the current Toowoomba Regional Planning Scheme and is partly contained within the vulnerable uses restriction area of the flood hazard overlay. It is noted that service station is not listed as a vulnerable use under the plan scheme. The service station, and site plan, please, in attachment 4, Wendy, page 1. Sorry, attachment 4. Sorry. Thank you. proposed service station will operate between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m, 7 days a week, and will include, as shown on this plan, a retail store / operations building with a gross floor area of 286 square metres. It will include four petrol bowsers under a roofed canopy that has a maximum height of 5.5 metres. Obviously, a enclosed refuge storage area, outdoor seating and dining, sealed manoeuvring areas, pedestrian pathways, underground fuel tanks, 11 on-site parking spaces, and on-site landscaping. A service station is listed as a use that is consistent with the intent of the local centre zone. However, the proposal is considered a conflict with the assessment benchmarks of the local centre zone code, including the purpose of the code, due to the fact that the proposed development will not primarily service the day-to-day needs of the local community. Despite this conflict, it is considered that the proposed service station achieves compliance with the relevant parts of the strategic framework of the plan scheme on the basis that the development will provide a service that caters for the regional and district level needs of the transport network at a key strategic location, being the intersection of two highways. The proposed service station will provide motorists with increased choice and will result in more travelling motorists stopping in Yarraman, which is likely to result in increased patronage of existing businesses within Yarraman. The scale of the proposed use will ensure that it does not undermine the viability of any existing centre activities operating in the immediate vicinity of the subject site. The proposed development is required to provide 12 on-site car parking spaces. However, the submitted proposal only provides 11 spaces. The proposed development will also result in the loss of 4 on-street angled car parking spaces within Toomey Street and 1 long vehicle parking bay to facilitate the proposed Toomey Street vehicular access to the site, being the one in the top left corner. However, Council's transport and drainage officers have advised they do not oppose this as a sufficient on-street parking supply is available within the local area. Given the availability of on-street parking spaces in the vicinity of the proposed service station, it is considered the proposal to provide 11 on-site parking spaces achieves compliance with the plan scheme. The subject site has frontage to Toomey Street and Margaret Street, which are both state-controlled roads. The proposed development involves the establishment of a new crossover to both frontages, being alluded to with one on the top left, also bottom right there. As part of the assessment, the application was referred to SARA, being the State Assessment Referral Agency, who in turn referred the application to the Department of Transport and Main Roads. Sorry, I should use that, shouldn't I? Work for us? That's why I don't trust technology. I need a big stick. Sorry. So it was referred to the SARA and ultimately to the Department of Transport and Main Roads. SARA's referral agency response included conditions that restrict movements from Toomey Street to being left in, left out Toomey Street. They also restricted, they prohibited a right turn movement out of Margaret Street but permitted left in, left out and right in. So it should be noted that Council does not have jurisdiction to alter the access arrangements approved by DTMR, given that the roads fronting the subject site are both state-controlled roads. Council's Senior Environmental Officer has advised that the submitted technical reporting, including a noise impact assessment, air quality assessment and a waste management plan, demonstrate the proposed service station has been designed and can be conditioned to operate in a manner that will not result in land uses, particularly nearby residences, in the surrounding area being detrimentally impacted by noise and dust. In particular, it has been demonstrated the construction of acoustic rated fencing and dense planting along the subject site's boundaries to sensitive land uses, being the top boundary, which is the southern boundary, and a partial part of the western boundary, which is the right boundary, basically where the green area is shown up there, Council. Along those boundaries with sensitive land uses and limitation of the operating hours from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and permitting deliveries only during daytime hours, will appropriately manage off-site noise impacts. Wendy, can we just pull up attachment, we got attachment 4, so I go down to page 3. I may just get you to scroll through them as I'm going to talk to the signage here, councillors, and these elevations give details of the signage, the next 4 pages, sorry. The proposal involves the installation of one roof sign at each road frontage. The sign will be affixed directly to the roof of the proposed service station, as opposed to being standalone pylons. The design includes these actually as part of the structure. The sign on the Toomey Street frontage will protrude approximately 2 metres above the roof, resulting in a maximum height of 6.56 metres. The sign on the Margaret Street frontage will protrude 4.4 metres above the roof, resulting in a maximum height of 8.75. And if we can look at the... Sorry, thank you very much. Yeah, so the difference being... trying to work this out. So we've got the Toomey Street sign here. Yep, apologies. I'm just trying to get my bearings here. Yes, that is the Toomey Street. So this being the sign on the Toomey Street frontage will have a 2.2 metre projection above the roof. This being the Margaret Street sign having a 4.4 metre projection above the roof. Both roof signs have been well integrated into the building design and will positively contribute to the streetscape and character of the surrounding commercial area. The proposed signs are well separated and will not result in visual clutter, particularly for passing motorists. The proposed signs will be appropriate... Sorry.
Could I just interrupt there for a second? Councillor Rebecca's question.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thanks, Jeff. Just before you went on, I wanted to get a little help with the orientation here. So if we're looking at that image that we've got up there on the screen, everybody knows the pie shop?
Yes, that
So the pie shop is right there to the... Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
So if you scroll down, when you actually look at this, many elevations here which actually give a bit of a better view of that. So down again, so that's the Toomey Street look. Down again, please. That's again, next page. So down again, please. So that is looking from the pie shop towards the site there.
Yeah.
Councillor, that.
Okay.
So that will be looking due east. That will be your view.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Melissa.
That's okay. Thanks, Jeff. Just while we're on the signage, and excuse me if I've missed this point, is the sign a lit sign that will give off light pollution, or is it a non-lit sign at night?
It is an internally baffled illuminated sign, yes, councillor. And
But just a number or the whole sign, will it give off light pollution to surrounding?
it will give off light, but it has been considered as part of the assessment that it will not pollute nearby sensitive receptors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so that was my last point here, was the proposed signs have been appropriately located within the development to ensure they do not overshadow or detrimentally impact on any surrounding land uses, including light impact. Talking about public notification next. As noted previously, the public notification period attracted 10 properly made submissions. These were all opposing the development. It included, as I mentioned previously, a petition signed by 243 persons. The key issues raised in the submissions included the planning and economic need for the service station in this location, the traffic safety and impacts, particularly the establishment of new vehicle accesses, inconsistency with the purpose and overall outcomes of the local centre zone code, loss of on-street parking, impacts that will have on existing businesses, off-site amenity environmental impacts, the height of the proposed advertising devices, compatibility with the existing character of Yarraman, accuracy of the submitted traffic reporting, appropriateness of a new service station when vehicles are transitioning from fossil fuels to electric, and the provision of electric vehicle charging facilities within the service station. The issues raised by submitters have all been considered and addressed as part of the assessment. In addition to the matters I've previously spoken to, which I just referred to, some additional comments include the fact that the economic need for the service station has not been demonstrated through a formal needs assessment, as Council did not request one. The development applications for service stations in urban areas are not necessarily expected to demonstrate need and economic need, as it is considered to be it is not considered to be overwhelmingly relevant at this appropriately zoned and located site. The proposed signage is consistent with the anticipated for a service station development and clearly displays the name of the business. The signage is appropriately separated from nearby premises and has been appropriately located and integrated into the building design to ensure it does not unduly affect the amenity of nearby residences. The traffic reporting submitted with the application has been prepared under the direction of a registered professional traffic engineer of Queensland and has been assessed and approved by the Department of Main Roads. The proposed development has been designed to directly front and address the site frontage, being the New England Highway and the Diagula Highway intersection, ensuring consistency with the existing and anticipated amenity and character for the development over the subject site, given its location in the commercial heart of Yarraman. In addition, the appearance of the proposed development and the proposed car parking areas will be softened and enhanced by landscaping and shade tree planting. Any proposed reuse or modification of the service station at a time when fossil fuels are no longer necessary for vehicles will be considered and assessed at such time. Services provided as part of the service station are at the discretion of the operator and not to be reasonably nominated by council, referring to the provision of electric vehicle charging. And two, Wendy, can we just roll up to the top elevation of yours, page 3? Just that one there, sorry. Just talking to the design, the design achieves frontage to the street. It's consistent with existing buildings in Yarram, which are historically and do all front the street. So that's just something I was talking to there about being consistent with the existing character. In conclusion, the proposed development has been assessed against the relevant statutory planning framework and is considered to achieve compliance with all parts of this framework, including the applicable codes, with the exception of the purpose of the local centre zone code. However, it is considered the proposed development achieves compliance with the relevant elements of the strategic framework of the plan scheme and is therefore considered on balance to achieve compliance with version 25 of the Toowoomba Regional Plan Scheme. In addition to compliance with the plan scheme, the location of the proposed service station at an intersection of two highways is considered to be an other relevant matter consistent with Section 45 of the Planning Act in support of the development. It is the officer's recommendation that this proposed development be approved subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Tim, you've got a question?
Couple, thanks, Chair. Through you. First question, things like economic need or competition or whether they're electric or not, they're not questions for us as a council necessarily, are they? They're more of a developer's done his own business case kind of question?
Councillor, through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Yeah, good. No, that's just follow-up. My actual question concerns, and I'm on page 40 of the report, or 47 of board books, this idea of the local centre zone code, and you've said it doesn't comply or it's not consistent, is your wording, with the local area zone code. So I would assume attachment 3, which is the zoning map, shows us the blue, which is the local area zone code, in your words, is stuff used for the day-to-day needs of the local community. So is that's correct?
Councillor, through the chair, yes, that is correct. To talk to that point, there is only one centre zone within Yarraman, being the local centre zone,
Yep.
and hence, whilst it does not comply with that wording within the local centre zone code, under the assessment framework, we then go to the next level of the assessment benchmarks, being the strategic framework of the plan scheme. And given the strategic framework, if in my report, refers to the need to provide services which service a regional level of need. And it's considered that given this site is located at a key strategic location at the intersection of two highways, there is justification for approval based on the strategic framework compliance, whilst it does not comply with the local centre zone code requirements.
Okay, so I suppose follow-up, if I look at other shops or businesses that I know are in the blue zone here, so we've got IGA Bakery, 2 pubs, Pink Flamingo, etc. They're primarily for use by the day-to-day needs of the local community, but if I was driving through with a truck or a car, I'd probably stop there anyway, right? So I suppose how is a service station different? It may be used by the local community, but also by those travelling through. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Councillor, through the chair, correct. To your point, yes, Yarraman is at a key strategic location, so any business there would expect to be used by people other than local residents. So I guess that is probably somewhat of the shortcoming of the zoning that is prescribed to the town, and it's probably not a fit-for-purpose zoning, I guess. So we're working with a zoning that we have, but the planning scheme allows us to take it to that next level to provide justification for uses that we consider to be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, this particular application is an impact assessment application, not a code assessment. So it's not bounded by the code straight up, hence the reason that there's been regular reference to the planning scheme as a whole, because when it's an impact assessment, you apply the entire planning scheme, not just the codes relating to a particular zone. So it's important to differentiate that.
Thanks, Stuart. Councillor Jeff.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Just a couple of questions, if I could, Jeff, and thank you very much. First of which is around the character of the building and the landscape and what have you. What was the process did the developer come to council with that design, or did you have to work with them through conditions and design to get it to look something similar to the amenity around it?
Councillor, through the chair, correct, we did not. Well, the first point, we worked with the developer, or the applicant, sorry, to get a design that was more consistent with what the plan scheme was trying to achieve. Initially, it was more of a cookie-cutter service station approach, for lack of a better term, and we really pushed hard on achieving an appropriate interface with the corner and both street frontages, ending in the final design we have.
Thank you. The second one, if I could, Chair, through you to Jeff, and maybe it's to Mr Jackson. Just in regard to the visual noise fume amenity around the location, which is obviously of concern to submitters, and the instruction here, or the matter how it's dealt with, is explained. I just wondered if it would be available, Chair, through you to Mr Jackson, if he could expand a little bit more on perhaps the light with the signage and the smell, I guess, for use of a better term.
Thanks, Councillor Jeff, and my apologies for not announcing the officers' designations or titles. You always worry about missing someone out, so I don't do it. But Jeff, Luke is our environmental officer, obviously. He's well qualified to comment.
Thank you, through the chair, councillor. We received a noise impact assessment, an air quality impact assessment, a lighting impact assessment, and a waste management plan from the applicant through this. As usual, we provided our own feedback and assessment through the assessment process, a couple of outstanding issues, et cetera, that were readily amended within reports that were received. We endorsed a couple of reports, the noise report and the lighting report were endorsed documents within condition 8 of that assessment. So, for example, when we're looking at noise, for example, we are looking for the inputs, where the noise sources are going to be located. We're checking that the model includes appropriate levels within them, so that when the projection occurs out to the receptors, that the model is incorporating sources that should be reflective of both the sound power level and the frequency and the location. We're checking for the location of the receptors. We're looking for the suitability of any mitigation measures, for example, acoustic fences, to check that the model is indeed providing the effect which is stated. If any of the reports were ever missing any data, then we've actually got the ability to do our own little models to confirm whether or not something that may have been missing, if relevant, could then be assessed as well. So, for example, for noise, we believe that that report was complete enough and assessed the impacts well enough that it was suitable for endorsement. Same for lighting. So we received the lighting impact assessment. Again, we have the ability within council, between myself and co-officers within the building, where we can check the validity of the information that is provided, check that the standards, the impacts that were represented are reasonable within that. So, for example, for lighting is a bit of a perceptive one, because it is the impact of the light within a potential dwelling and whether or not the lighting from a service station may indeed cause an increase of light on the residence itself. So within a living room, within a bedroom, will at night I have an increased amount of light within a bedroom that I wouldn't have normally had beforehand. And through the combination of the report that was submitted plus our own work, which we used to reference that, we believe that, again, lighting could also be relevantly endorsed within Condition 8 and then conditions throughout the decision notice to impose those relevant standards. And also for noise and for lighting, we've got conditions requiring that certification monitoring does occur so that the noise levels that and the lighting levels that we've provided conditions for are indeed met.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Luke. Just in regard to the air quality assessment,
Yes.
we've got conditions also in regard to air quality. So that
Yes.
same sort of scenario that they've got levels that they can't go over or exceed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the main source of air quality in a service station is the vent from the underground stacks. And sorry, could we go back to the site plan very quickly? Attachment 4. The top button, the bottom button, the big one. Okay, so we have an air vent proposed here, which means that the resident immediately to the south down Toomey Street, which is below grade level of that, we received a specific air quality report to confirm that the venting of the underground material was not going to cause an impact to the receptor immediately adjacent to that. And that report indicated that it was well below the assessment criteria for human health and amenity. We confirm that with reports we've received for other service stations and just as a spot check to confirm whether or not those impacts were going to be reasonable and the modelling was reasonable, and it checked out.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Chair.
Are you there, Megan? Councillor Megan has a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Technology. Jeff, the thing I don't understand is in the conditions where it says it's noted the approval and relocation of the off-street parking spaces with subject to the further approval, will be subject to further approval by Council's road operations, and the requirements for a necessary approval are included in the recommended conditions. Can you just explain that to me?
Yes, Councillor. Sorry.
Yeah, go on, yeah.
I was saying, Councillor, the situation is the applicant nominated a proposed relocation position. If you just pull up attachment 4 there, Wendy, for yeah, so they showed the location there. We have had been in discussions with council's road operations, who have concluded that they don't consider that to be an appropriate location, and they are currently undertaking, or intend, not currently, they intend to undertake a review of the available on-street parking relocation positions in Yarraman. So they don't want to be held to a position yet. They want to have time to consider where those spaces should be reallocated to.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Councillor Melissa.
Thanks, Chair. Just for you, Luke, please. I think you've already answered this question, but I just want to drill down a little bit more, talking about the sound and the acoustic component. So here it's got landscape acoustic barrier. So when it comes to landscaping, is there a specific requirement of, I don't know, particular trees or particular landscaping that will create that sound barrier? And also the ongoing maintenance, is there a condition on that as well? Sorry.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. Vegetation doesn't provide acoustic attenuation. A solid barrier does. So what was endorsed was an acoustic barrier fence that has vegetation in front of it to help soften the amenity aesthetics of that. And in terms of landscaping, I might defer to Jeff because I didn't look at any of the landscaping side of things. but there is typically an ongoing maintenance burden on someone to maintain landscaping.
I thought the landscaping was for acoustic purposes, so, but
No.
that explains that now. So
And we have a
that's all good.
condition very, very specifically noting that acoustic barriers must be built as per the endorsed noise report, section 5.2.
Thank you.
Jeff, would you like to comment on vegetation? Councillor Melissa, are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh, righto, okay. Councillor Kerry, you have a question?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. Might be a question that might be directed to the General Manager, but just a general question. This application deals with a number of things that under this term settlement pattern, particularly the economic need for the proposed service station, and it sort of hints at the viability of that, the operation of this or the already existing Stargazers service station. We've in recent times dealt with service station applications in Toowoomba, but never has, in my recollection, been raised that the economic factors or the viability of the business was relevant at all. Why is it now relevant at Yarraman?
Oops. Basically, if this service station was in a residential zoning and not a commercial zoning, it would probably be required to justify from an economic viewpoint and a planning need viewpoint as to why it should be allowed to go into a residential zone. In this situation, we have a commercial zone that's designed specifically for non-residential uses and uses of a commercial nature. And the service station certainly falls into that category. And so the officers have decided that in this case, it's in a zoning that is designed basically for commercial uses. It would be somewhat unusual to be asking it to justify itself economically.
Just further to that, Councillor, the actual zone codes of the plan scheme generally nominate what is a consistent use within the zone under an acceptable outcome and what are inconsistent uses, and they're uses that are consistent with the intent of the zone. Service station is listed as a use that is consistent with the intent of the local centre zone, and the reason the assessment has proceeded beyond the zone code is for the purpose of addressing primarily for the servicing the local community purpose only. Like, we would only, correct me if I'm wrong here, Stuart, the position would be that officers would ask for an economic needs assessment where a use was inconsistent with the intent of the zone.
Okay, thank you. Just as a matter of interest, do we know what was on that block of land before it was cleared at all?
I have tried to find that and I couldn't find historical imagery that was appropriate, but it appeared to be a house. Residents may be the better people to ask for that. I'd looked back at 70s aerial imagery and it gets me to about 2 kilometres up and I can't see anything. So, yeah, so I just guess I would have to defer to residents. Apologies.
You're right. That's it, Councillor John. Councillors, Councillor Tim, thanks.
Another couple, actually. The petition with 243 signatures is not included as an attachment, so I suppose I'll take your word for it. Do you have any, any info if they're all locals or?
The majority of them, having read through them, have local addresses. There were a few double-ups, I'll admit, but counting through them, it was just a case of there were 243 names, we go with that, that's what's on the document, but they all largely appeared to be local persons or people within the region.
Thanks. Another question. Stormwater drainage and runoff is addressed in your report in conditions 16 to 20 adequately. It says it goes by way of sealed underground pipe to the street channel. Do you have any knowledge? Where does the street channel go in Yarraman?
I do, but I have people over here, engineers, that we better
Yeah,
first
thanks.
to answer that question. Chair can defer to Michael or Cindy.
through the chair, Councillor, it goes to the creek downstream.
Yarraman Creek.
Yes, it's nearby creek. So Department of Main Roads has the authority to approve that stormwater management plan, which the applicant has submitted. So department has approved that, taking the stormwater into their jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, if there's no more questions, Councillor Carroll, your thoughts? Councillor James, thoughts, questions? No? If there's no more questions at this stage, could I ask, speaking on behalf of submitters, Helen, could you come forward to the microphone, please? How do I pronounce your last name, Helen? Is it Budgen?
Wendy, it might be useful to pull up attachment 2, I think it is the aerial image one.
And Helen, could I ask, I'll have the gong going here, if we can stick to 5 minutes, please.
Also, that is, you press that button and Wendy will have the aerial image up for you to look at. That's too confusing. Oh, good.
I'll stick to my notes.
Sorry, Helen, go to the microphone.
I beg your pardon. I like to hear that. Thank you, sir. Afternoon, everyone. Councillors, thank you very much for allowing us to come to speak. I'm only one person, these people here. Their businesses all are severely impacted. I'm here representing Heather and Vince Thurkop, who live immediately over the road behind the bank, who are not well people. One has very bad asthma. They are beside themselves. They can hardly get out of their driveway as it is because of the traffic. Another serious thing that happened, when they came and did a study on the traffic, they came and did it in COVID times, and you could actually let a cannon off down the main street and it wouldn't have hurt anybody. Very little traffic. That corner is incredibly dangerous. Putting up a screen for noise, dust, fume pollution will only obscure vision. And the reason that corner works is because it's kept simple. And that's how there hasn't been a dreadful accident. And I mean dreadful. The other thing is, I don't know why all these people have done so much hard work, spent time and money, when they didn't approach the people of Yarraman first to see if they even had that need of an extra service station. We have a very good service station that provides the people of Yarraman very professionally. They sell good petrol, not cheap petrol, which many of our cars do require by the manufacturer's recommendation. If they shut our good service station, many of us will have to leave town to buy our petrol elsewhere. And we don't want to take our business out of town. The other thing is, we didn't have a service station. That's one of the requirements to remain a township. These service station owners, they stuck their necks out. They paid the extra, quite large amount of insurance premiums, which other people didn't have, which had to be put up front. I know it's 100% tax deductible, but you have to have the money up front. Now, they did that, kept us down as a town, and proceeded to join our community, look after us. The food is beautiful, kept at a reasonable price. The petrol is very good. The services, even the fuel is kept at a reasonable price as best they can with the current influxes. I think it's very sad to wipe these people out, really impact on their business when they've done everything to help us as a community. And really, we are slighting them and we have no loyalty because they have helped our town very much. And they are very nice people and they are very committed to improving their service station as they can. The bakery people is dreadful. They will speak for themselves, I'm sure, but their business is directly threatened. There'll be several businesses that are really going to be impacted and will definitely in time, if not immediately, shut. Why should one business come in and monopolise all the rest, put out a lot of unhealthy pollution? And why did people go ahead and organise this to this extent without actually having a public meeting and asking the people of the community first? We don't need another service station. That's the truth. Be like having a second chemist. You know, we don't need it, but we definitely need one. And the one that we have is very good. And the other people work very hard in their businesses and employ quite a few people in the community, both young and old. And I'd like to keep that and keep a nice, quiet little town rather than this monstrosity right in the guts of it that will pollute everything, confuse the whole traffic situation, be incredibly dangerous and threaten the livelihoods of a number of immediately people, plus be very unhealthy for all the families around. The other thing is it's right in the valley, and that contains fumes, pollution, dust, etc. It also will impact the bank for the ATM people. Those parks prior to the bank and prior to the bakery, they will be obscure. There's that many people parked there to duck into the bank, duck into the bakery, duck in wherever. They're not going to walk from down Toomey Street up to do that. The parking works, the big truck parking and four-wheel drive caravan parking on Toomey Street, on the left-hand side of the road heading towards Blackbutt, works beautifully as it is. And if you shorten that, I don't think the trucks are going to be shortened, nor the caravans and the four-wheel drive, so where will they park? You know, and that's something. Is my 5 minutes up there?
Yeah, it's very close.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll let these other people talk, but no, it's a serious thing. It's going to be a negative impact on the community. Would be lovely to have something there, but not the monstrosity service station. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Helen. Don't go anywhere. There may be
Questions?
councillors. Do you have any questions for Helen? No? Thanks so much, Helen, for coming in and sharing your concerns.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank
No
you, sir.
worries.
Thank you, everybody.
And could I ask Mr. Peter Ivanek? Marie? Okay.
I've just got one question. My question is the noise and the dust while building the service station, because that will impact us immensely. People won't be able to sit outside. People won't even be able to find a park anyway. So have they done a report on that? That's the only question I've got.
Yeah, I can quickly answer that. Okay. Basically, under the building regulation and under a building approval, there are requirements to suppress dust and maintain and ensure that there are no dust during that construction period. And often we have them in planning approvals, and as we have in this one, Condition 40 actually addresses that very issue in considerable detail. Yep.
Oh, okay then.
We can give you a copy of that.
No, you're right.
Thank you very much. Any questions, councillors? Councillor James?
Mine's probably would more be to our officers. I guess it was around.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, mine's to the officers. Chair, are you happy for me to proceed? Yep. So mine's for the officers.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just wanted to get clarification around. Ms. Budgeon speaking before just spoke about the traffic assessment and the timing of that. Can that be just talked to? So just around the traffic assessment, the timing of when it was done, if it's accurate, just the concern that was raised about that, please.
Through the chair, Councillor, both front-end roads are under the jurisdiction of DTMR. So it is DTMR who imposes conditions regarding all the issues with regard to traffic. So what council is responsible for the access location? So we have assessed and provided the access as much as further away from the intersection.
If I can just follow that, Chair. I'm more around the assessment that was done, the timing of it, in terms of, is it an accurate assessment of what, just the statement that was made before, just in regards to, when we're talking about safety of that particular corner and access and you know, and an increase in vehicles and things like that?
Timing, I can't recall at the moment, so we need to go back to the traffic report and see whether there's timing information is available in that report.
To answer the question, it's not a cop-out. We have no jurisdiction over the reports, Councillor. DTMR approved the report. It was prepared under the guidance of an RPEQ. There are practices in place to ensure that these reports are prepared by appropriately qualified persons. I understand your question. We just have no ability to, I suppose, dig into that situation. It was approved by DTMR and we have no ability to question that.
Yeah, okay, so that's probably what I was getting at, but it's been and seen and approved by I guess the ruler of that road through DTMR.
Yes, correct.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you,
question?
Mr Chair. I have grave concerns about the impacts of egress and access here with the left, even with the left in, left out, and I disagree. Jurisdiction is TMR's, but this is our community, and the safety of this community is in our...
Hang on, Councillor Carroll, we'll get to debate.
I just want to ask if this has been put past our T&D planning engineers,
Okay, so
transport and
that's the question.
drainage engineers, and I know, look, I understand where the jurisdiction knows. I've been here for a while, but I think that, you know, I've been travelling on this road long before I got on this council, because it was the way up to the Sunshine Coast, and that's the way I used to go. This intersection, and it's the intersection of two highways. It really, if you were building a road today on two highways, you wouldn't have enough clearance on that intersection, and it probably just wouldn't get a Guernsey. But because it's been there for a long time, it is. And I really do have concerns about it, and I would have liked, I think, and I know we've ticked the boxes and done what we need to do, but I would have liked for it to have gone past our traffic engineers to see what they thought. And the other question that I'd like to ask, are they going to be selling fuel to trucks? What's the length of trucks? Has it been looked into how long it's going to take them to get out and in? Even though it's a left in, left out, it's still going to hold up traffic. Trucks are, you know, big trucks are long.
Yep.
And if it's a service station and it's in a very visible position, and I'm not certain that that there's enough
So,
clearance
two questions.
for those trucks. Yeah.
Two questions. Oh, Jeff, would you like to?
Please don't tell me that it's TMR's jurisdiction.
Councillor, through the chair, the applicant has nominated that articulated vehicles will be required to access the site. They have provided us with swept paths through the site. And the response, Councillor, is we do not have the jurisdiction to tell DTMR they cannot approve what they feel fit to approve under their regulations. We are contained to assessing the movements within the site. The applicant has demonstrated that the vehicles can traverse through the site, entering and leaving in a forward gear.
And do you know what I'm meaning through you, Mr Chair, how long it takes a truck to get out and hold up traffic that's coming along the road? I can tell you about a shopping centre that was at Drayton, and it just actually held up traffic out there on one of their heavy transport routes for 15 and a half weeks. 15 and a half weeks.
So,
All their planning for those sorts of things is done in Brisbane, and I just wonder sometimes if anyone comes out and has a look at it. And I know that's not for us to be answering, but I'm just pointing out the deficiencies in those types of decisions. They really need to understand what the situation is on the ground and how much traffic it holds. And I think it comes back to Councillor James's and what was mentioned in the presentation we've just had. If you do, you would probably be still having trucks through COVID, but you would not be having as many cars going through this intersection. So I have to say to you, I have grave concerns about not so much the cars, but I do have concerns about trucks exiting and entering that facility.
thank you.
Councillor, through the chair, the consultant planner is also here. He may be
That's
able to
where
talk to the point of when the studies were undertaken.
I'm just about to, if there's no further questions for directed towards the submitters, I know that was to the officers. I'd like to call, if that's the case, is that the case? No further questions at this stage? I'd like to call Mick Shepherd on behalf of the applicant forward to address the panel, please. Come on down, Mick. Same for you, mate, if you would be able to stick to 5 minutes and stay up the front if there's any questions.
Thank you, Chair. I think probably the issues have been very well addressed so far by the officers, and obviously acknowledge the concerns of the local residents in terms of their day-to-day experiences. I think just to try and clarify a couple of points, the layout's been designed not to accommodate HRVs and larger vehicles in terms of filling up. Obviously, we need to get those types of vehicles onto the site for the fuel, to refuel and those sorts of things, but it's not intended that articulated vehicles will come on to fill up on site. We will not have high flow Bowsers in there, which are typically what's required for those larger vehicles. In terms of the survey work, there was survey work done in terms of actually looking at the intersection, and that would have been done during COVID, I understand it, but we also were using data which is more generally gathered by DTMR in terms of the traffic volumes moving along those road networks. So it was that traffic impact assessment was prepared based on 2 sets of data. I think just probably more generally, there's a couple of points I just want to make. I mean, I think
Mick,
in terms...
Can I just ask, pardon the interruption, can I just ask there, just to clarify, there won't be articulated trucks coming onto the site to fill up from a Bowser because you don't have that type of Bowser to fill those trucks up.
That's right.
The only ones that are articulated that will be coming onto the site are obviously the fuel trucks to refuelling the tanks.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, thanks.
I guess one of the key issues that's been raised is relating to potential impacts on businesses and, you know, obviously understand those concerns. I think one of the things to talk and just to sort of reiterate is obviously we're in a local centre zone here, and there are a large number of uses that are commercial in nature that could locate on that site. You know, for example, there could be a shop, it could be a small shopping centre, it could be healthcare, offices, and all of those potentially will change the dynamics within the town centre. So I think that's sort of just a really important point to emphasise. Also, I think in some of the documentation there was a concern that this might actually be an overdevelopment of the site. I think again there you've got to just consider the fact that we're proposing 280 square metres of floor area. I think if you look at the actual local centre code, that it would actually support a floor area at least twice that size, around 670, maybe not quite twice, but it could have a fairly significant development on that site, and that development would also require access points in and out of the site, which couldn't be avoided to be, you know, for the development to function. So I think one of the other key things to emphasise here is the fact that this use is not really designed to attract traffic to the site. It will obviously encourage people to drop in off the state-controlled roads, and therefore it's not actually generating traffic in its own right and not becoming a destination, as it were. It's more of a facility and a use that will just cater for traffic that is already on the road network and passing past the site. So I think all the other issues have been really thoroughly assessed. Obviously, we've been through a very detailed process in terms of assessing the potential impacts of the use on the surrounding neighbourhood, and have submitted a large number of detailed reports to demonstrate that the impacts are acceptable and can be managed and controlled through conditions.
Thanks, Mick. I have a question from Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, thanks, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your time, Mick. In regard to the concerns from the first submitter, Helen, in regard to the obscuring of vision at the corner, keeping in mind that DTMR obviously are the assessors of the roads that that corner goes to. Was there conditions put on the development in regard to heights or what have you that you could have in that area to ensure that there was no additional obscuring of view on that corner?
I think the maximum height limit through that zone is 8.5 metres. The canopy has a maximum height of 5.5 and the actual building on the corner is actually below that level. The signs do pop up above the building, as you've seen, but it's essentially a single-storey building. I think in terms of impacts on views, obviously the building will have an impact in terms of that corner, but during the design process, it was considered important that that site has a built presence on that corner from an urban design perspective. So we went through a number of iterations in terms of the design to come up with something that we thought was more sympathetic and consistent with the character of the local area. There is obviously a built form on that corner, and that will have some impacts in terms of visibility, but Main Roads have also included conditions in their approval which restrict parking in front of the site on Margaret Street, which will help to improve the flows of traffic through that junction. I think it's also important to emphasise that Main Roads are also got improvement works proposed for that intersection, which include a right turn into Margaret Street from the Diagla Highway and also a right turn from Diagla Highway into Brown Street, I think on the opposite side. So there are improvement works to that intersection that are planned by Main Roads.
Just one more if I could, thanks Chair. In regard to the public notification and as part of the impact assessment, were you or the applicant approached by local residents about their concerns individually?
I wasn't, no, not personally.
Okay,
no.
thanks.
Councillors, any other questions? Sorry, Helen, well, it's councillors as the panel.
Chair, Chair, I have a couple of questions for officers when we're back to that point.
Rightio. Councillor Megan, are you still with us? You got any questions? No, I guess not.
Sorry. You know, you press the mute button. No, I'm fine so far. I'm just listening and all the questions are being asked. So thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So thank you, Mick. If there's no further questions for Mick, I'll let him sit down from the lectern. Thanks for coming and presenting. Councillor Rebecca, you've got a question. Jeff, would you be able to come back up, please?
Yes, potentially. Thank you, Chair, through you. I want to go back to stormwater, please. So in the report, I feel like you're about to say something.
I'll defer to my engineering colleagues. But
Sure, okay. So in the report, it's mentioned on page 6 and also I think page 19. And I need to understand this because Yarramint Creek is an area where there's been a lot of effort from this council and from the community to revegetate it, to clean it up, to make it a beautiful place. It's near the park where, the community plays, kids play, and then they toddle across the little bridge. And page 6 of the report says that, as Councillor McMahon, I think it was, raised, that the stormwater from the new roofed and sealed areas must be picked up and discharged by way of sealed underground pipe to the street channel. And then where does the street channel drain to? It drains to Yarramint Creek. And I was flicking through because I thought I heard you say that that has been granted environmental approval by who? Is it TM?
TMR are the jurisdiction around the infrastructure within the state-controlled roads. They have required the standard that they've allowed the discharge at the rate that it's proposed to the street, as I understand. The environmental management, because I assume, I assume you're referring to the treatment of that water before it leaves the site and ensuring that is an appropriate standard?
That's part of my question. That's part of my question.
I would advise, and I would probably defer to Luke on this point, given that it's an environmental matter, but service stations routinely are required to and propose and are conditioned to provide treatment devices within the design so that all stormwater is appropriately treated before it leaves the site.
Yeah, so that's mentioned on page 16, I think, of the report. 19, pardon me.
So just, Councillor, through the Chair, refer you to page 19, condition 113. Oh, sorry, is that what you said?
That's just exactly what I said, thank you. It's nice. Anyway. You're not the first, you won't be the last. Jeff? So on that, the SQID is the Stormwater Quality Improvement Device. So the idea is that this squid takes the contaminated water that comes about with when there's a fuel station and cleans it up. Now, when I read this though, the squid doesn't eliminate the squid doesn't eliminate the petrochemicals that contaminates the water. It reduces the level of pollution to a point that I guess TMR has deemed to be appropriate. Is that correct?
Councillor, I will defer to Luke, being environmental officer.
Thank you.
Councillor, through you, Chair. I'll also refer you to, in addition to condition 113, 122, which provides some set water quality parameters that the development must meet. So your initial comment, which was in relation to the roof water plus site stormwater, roof water should be very clean. There'll be very minimal pollutants up there, so that's when a squid might come into play. Condition 122, under the general heading of service station, and there are a lot of conditions regarding stormwater treatment, forecourt cleaning, et cetera, that flow on from 122 through to about 140 that deal with the management of hydrocarbons. So what we have conditioned in here is for a proprietary treatment device, which some people may know as a Spell Puriceptor. There are other models, but this was one that was nominated by the applicant, and that one there is an oil-water separator, so that when you end up with someone who overfills, or if we have a tanker that produces a bit of a spill, there is a holding tank on site which will actually capture all of that hydrocarbon, and because hydrocarbons are lighter than water, this tank is designed through a proprietary system so that it always can contain the maximum amount of hydrocarbons that will come onto site in the largest component of a tanker. So when you see a tanker coming in and filling in a petrol station, it's not the 22,000 litre, which is the bulk system of it. There's a compartment within that, and it will be the maximum size of one of those compartments will be able to be held by this treatment device. We also have conditions written up that when the bulk refuelling occurs, that occurs within an area such that that refuelling can be captured by that treatment device. It can't occur on the road with a long hose draining down into it, because if there was a spill, if the hose was decoupled and it was still flowing, then that could go down the road. So we have, in condition 122, those particular limits. Those particular limits are set around state provisions for general water quality.
Okay, thank you. Now, Luke, Chair, just to unpack this, please. Okay, so we've got water that falls on the roof, and because there's no cars up on the roof, we can expect that's going to be just like any other roof. We don't have to
I hope
worry.
there's no cars ever on that
righto.
roof.
Then we have what was the name of the system that you were just
Spell
talking?
Puriceptor.
A spell Puriceptor?
Yes,
Okay.
SPL.
So then we've got-
Puriceptor. That's a proprietary device by one particular manufacturer. There are some other systems. That was
Sure.
the device that was nominated here.
Is that
and
a
it's most
squid?
commonly used through petrol stations.
Okay, and that's a squid.
In a broad sense, yes.
Yep, okay.
Squid is a very generic term
Yep.
that can include things as simple as an EnviroPod or a grate to capture gross litter, i.e. rubbish, wrappers, paper, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you. So genus squid, and this particular development has chosen the spell Puriceptor that you spoke about. Now, does that go around the entire perimeter of the proposed service station? That's the first question.
Some of the squids will. The spell Puriceptor is designed solely for the forecourt area. So if we went to attachment 4 again, please. There is an area within the bulk of the site deemed to be the forecourt, and that is the area surrounding the Bowsers, which is marked off by this area here. And as you can see, there's a dotted line around that area. So that's the forecourt.
Okay.
Any spills within those area report to the spell Puriceptor. So when you're dealing with areas out here, for example, in this particular car park, that would be picked up by a generic squid.
Okay. And then on that page 6 of the report, when it talks about the pipe discharging into let me get the right words before I say this, the stormwater being discharged by way of a sealed underground pipe to the street channel. What is that stormwater picking up?
That question, which is the one that is on screen there, condition 18, that is the one that you're referring to. That is under the subsection of works. So that is during construction. That work will be captured and controlled by whatever relevant squids are that are proposed by whichever contractor will build the device.
Okay,
to make sure that when there's bare earth, for example, that you're not going to have plumes of sediment running down during a rainwater event.
Okay, thank you. And I think this is my last one, Luke. TMR, where does TMR's jurisdiction end?
In terms of water quality, you might have to speak to one of the engineers regarding that point.
With your indulgence, Chair.
am interested in hydrocarbons and for this type of development, and its main impact being bulk fuel transfer and refueling. And so my point ends when I can impose condition 122 with a treatment train that deals with the forecourt areas of that. The remainder of the site, I have to defer back to the engineers because they provide the information regarding overall stormwater treatment grades.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So, Councillor, through you, Chair. So, stormwater quality is a requirement that's imposed by the state planning policy. So, through that, there is a requirement that the site must be greater than 2,500 square metres and a fraction impervious area greater than 25% for stormwater quality to be triggered. So, for this particular development, the stormwater quality isn't triggered from a pure stormwater quality point of view. The quality of water for contaminants from the fuel station is triggered on an environmental level. So TMR, So TMR in this instance, they will defer to the state planning policy as Toowoomba Regional Council will, and the state planning policy does not require stormwater quality treatment on site. That is separate to Luke's requirements for the environmental stuff. So the stuff in that forebay is deemed contaminated area and still requires that treatment to occur.
Okay, so because it doesn't meet those other thresholds, we come back to Toowoomba Regional Council being responsible for this meeting the state environmental legislation. Is that what you just said?
Yes, yeah, so it's required to meet the state planning policy for stormwater pollutants.
Okay. And how confident are we that it does meet those state stormwater requirements?
So the requirements are that the first trigger is a site for an MCU. It must be 2,500 square metres.
So so we're back to what we were saying
Yeah.
2 minutes ago.
Yeah, so it does not trigger under the state planning policy. So
So,
Sorry.
okay. So then it comes back again. We've got it going down, discharging into the street and making its way into Yarraman Creek.
Councillor Rebecca, this is a bit of deja vu for me. Some years ago, I refer, and I won't name the particular site, but very, very, very familiar with it. There was considerable concern and angst in another community about this very thing, and I refer to the Kubi Dam catchment. My understanding, albeit a long time ago, and conditions have probably become more stringent since then, is that in layman's terms, I think Luke's covered this off, that critical area is definitely captured within that device. Other areas, and we all frequent service stations, and you'll note those grated areas and how the sealed surface falls to those grated areas for collection. And I stand to be corrected, Luke, but those grated areas could possibly go through that device, cleansing device, simply because of the fact that a car parked after fuelling, as we know, can have problems at times. And if there is a fuel spill, if there's any wash from rain, it drains into those grated channels and it's collected centrally to a point on the site and it goes through that filtering device. I'm getting some nods, so, gee, I'm not even an engineer. But that was a very valid concern that you raise, and as I said, it reminds me of other instances, and particularly one that I was involved in, and particularly in a potable water catchment area, which was very critical, and there was a lot of talk about a cumulative impact. So I dare say that the same treatment method would be applied across the site here.
correct.
Yeah. So,
And in fact, all other new petrol filling stations that are built, much more stringent environmental controls are placed over service stations now than would have been the case just a few years ago.
so Councillor Rebecca, are you okay?
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillors, any other questions before we go back to standing orders and we either go to debate or go to motion? Go back to standing orders. I've got a mover, Councillor Tim, a seconder, Councillor Rebecca. Those in favour? That's carried. Councillors, there's the motion there. Could I get you to get that up in front of me, Wendy? My keyboard is doing strange things. Now, we have a recommendation. Do we want to go into debate? We do? Okay. Righto. Yep. So before we do that, obviously, as per meeting protocol, we need a mover and a seconder. Do I have a mover for Councillor? A mover for the motion and let me read it out for the benefit of those listening online, that council approve application number MCUI /2021/1282 and OWS /2021/1287 for a development permit for material change of use, service station and operational work, advertising devices to roof signs pursuant to the provisions of Section 60 of the Planning Act 2016 and subject to the conditions listed below in the recommendation. If I have no one wishing to move? Okay. So,
Chair, I'm happy to move that.
okay, Councillor Megan has moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor James? Okay. Councillor Megan, would you like to speak first as the mover, or?
Thanks, Chair. I think the gentleman just summed it up earlier when he said that this is a use in a zoned area exactly for this use. So while I think we all like to support our local businesses, I can only see that this is going to be good for Yarraman and the town of Yarraman and having people stop in Yarraman. And we can only ask people to jump through the hoops that we have set there or kick a ball through the goalposts that we have. And while this complies, I think we need to look at the bigger picture and hope that this is going to bring prosperity to the whole of Yarraman. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Megan. Speaker against, Councillor Tim.
Chair, thanks. I would like to speak against, but I'd like to very clearly alliterate my reasons. As someone who is generally quite pro-development, I think each case in light of their own facts, and I'd like to speak against this one today. My reasons have nothing to do with economic need, competition, or whether anyone there are going to put electric charging stations or not. While I would note the technical not compatibility with the local day-to-day use, local area zoning, it's also not my reason for speaking against. My reasons for speaking against are twofold. Firstly, 243 signatures from a town this size. Now, this is more for those in the chamber. We were briefed this morning that for the Colours of Yarraman Festival, 150 people came. That was a large event. Now, add another 100 to that. That's how many people were against this particular development and signed the petition, whether or not there was a few double-ups. My second and main reason for voting against this is because I raised very early the stormwater runoff, and I've heard the back and forth about whether or not it's appropriate, and I'm sure there are those who agree that it is. At the end of the day, I've got to drive out to Yarraman in a few weeks to have a meeting with the Friends of Yarraman Creek and the work they've done there and the amazing work that they've done to make this one of the only core platypus habitats in Toowoomba region where you can still see a platypus. Now, I read, I've probably gone from my, section 122 of the reasons, 122, number 1, this is in the approval conditions, that it has to remove 90% reduction in gross pollutants. I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me when you're 100 metres from a creek that contains core platypus habitat in Toowoomba region. Now, I know there's TMR studies that'll back all the opposite up, but this is where I sit. And my job as the councillor with the environment portfolio is to think what's best for the region and what's best for all inhabitants. And for that reason today, I will be voting against this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Tim. Is there a speaker for the motion? Councillor James, you've seconded. Would you? No? Okay. Councillor Megan, would you like to sum up?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just caution councillors to ask advice and have framework where we rely on experts, really experts, environmental, engineering, all those sorts of things, and then go against their advice. I guess, I some of the submitters had come from the environmental angle, saying that they were worried about the environmental runoff into the creek. Perhaps that might have been a bit more of a consideration, but I just caution sort of thinking that we know more than people who are studied and educated in their specific field, and we ask people to comply with certain standards, and then we go against that, and we kind of know what happens then when this goes against the officer's recommendations, it's taken into the Planning and Environment Court, and then council is accused of spending ratepayers' money on things that were recommended for approval.
Mr Chair, I'd like to move point of order here. Thank you. We are councillors sitting around this table aware of all those things, and I don't think that's a wrapping up.
I beg to differ, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Megan is entitled to give her views in a wrap-up. Are you finished, Councillor Megan?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillors, in closing, before I call for the vote, I just urge you to be mindful that the planning grounds on which we can object, whilst I appreciate Councillor Tim's views on signatures on a petition, there are formally made objections as per the planning legislation that we must decide on as an application on those grounds, and within the context of the planning environment. Always a hard one, and there are no winners. In planning, it's either black or white. It's not warm and fuzzy, unfortunately. So with that, we go to the vote if there's no more speakers. Those for the recommendation as put by the officers. Councillor Megan, sorry, I don't. You're. Okay, so that's. Are those against? So the motion is carried.
Request a division of the vote. Thanks, Chair.
I voted in favour. Thank you, councillors. Thank
Chair,
you.
Chair, I just requested a division of the vote on that one,
Okay,
thanks.
division of the vote. So could I have those hands for Wendy again, please?
And Megan.
And Megan. Are we right? Okay. So thank you, gallery. Thank you, residents of Yarraman, for making the time to come down and submission. And thank you for those people observing online. That closes this afternoon's special meeting.